Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. Something completely voyeuristic today. We're talking about private jets. In particular, an Aussie company that's making private jet travel a whole lot more affordable and accessible. Luke Hampshire is the co-founder and CEO of Airly. Luke, welcome back to Fear and Greed.
Thank you, Sean. It's good to be back.
We spoke to you back in 2021, so obviously we're well overdue for an update. This week marked a very big milestone for the business, which we'll get to in a moment. But first, just take us through how Airly works.
Yeah, look, so Airly, the big thing for us with the business is private aviation. It is voyeuristic. It feels like it's hidden behind a curtain. So the whole idea of Airly is to simplify private aviation, make it a little bit more accessible. We'll never be that low-cost airline version of private aviation. Unfortunately, they're expensive. But it's more introducing models that are working overseas or concepts that are a bit different to the status quo that enable, fast-paced, very successful businessmen and women to move around to their schedule without having to deal with the commercial airlines. So it's more just, peeling that curtain back, showing everyone what it's about and being really transparent and upfront with pricing, I think has been a major win for us since we last spoke in 21.
Okay, so just explain that. If I'm someone that needs to go from Melbourne to Brisbane and then I need to get up to the Territory or somewhere, then back to Melbourne, typically, and I'd like to do that in a 24-hour period or 8 hours or 72 hours, I don't know. Basically, they come to you. How's the process work?
So yeah, basically nowadays we've got this app and it's online as well, airly.com/book. And ultimately you just tell us your itinerary and we get to work on making that happen. And that's really the whole thing about what we're about as well is it's not an Instagram flex. It's not to flaunt. People don't fly private to rub it in people's faces. They do it because, as you said, they have a really packed itinerary and have very little time to do it. So they simply, SMS, WhatsApp, website, social media DMs, we've received bookings through all the mediums, which is quite interesting trying to pull it all together. But ultimately, it's all generated through our app. For 6 passengers or less, you get the instant pricing, request availability. We just make sure we can cover it with a jet and a pilot, and that's it.
Okay, so let's get to the jets and pilots then. Big week this week. You've acquired your first aircraft that you own.
Yeah, so it's been a huge, really big week for us. But it's the combination of years and years, almost a decade at the business. I think Airly's formally 9 years old, but, working at it prior to formally incorporating it. But it's been a massive week. We closed on our first Phenom 100 aircraft, and that's chapter one of our next phase as a business. We've always been a broker sitting in the middle. We launched a jet card 3 years ago where we sort of had a really neat leasing agreement with an operator that we're very fond of, and now we progress into offering out fractional ownership on aircraft now, which is a huge move for us. And we've got our pilot, an incredible guy over in Dallas at the moment doing simulator training, and an incredibly good support network around us doing their part to make all this happen. So it's been a whirlwind. The actual aircraft acquisition process has been about 6 months. We've had deals fall through in France, Germany, the US, and ironically and full circle moment, our jet was sitting in Essendon in Melbourne.
All right. Is it hard to buy a jet?
It is. This is my first transaction, and it's been interesting. I have a lot of respect for those brokers out there that do it. Obviously, it would get easier the more you do it, but there's just so much to it, and especially when you're dealing with overseas, different languages, different laws. A lot of lawyers have done extremely well out of us the last sort of 6 months.
Yep.
It's a process, and it's a you can go inspect a Mazda 6 that costs you $5,000 cash and take that risk. You're talking about, 5 million Aussie for the site. Yeah. This is only a small jet too. So it's a 5-seater, but it's exactly what we need for what we're trying to do in our niche. There's a lot that goes on, and you've got to make sure that jet's in good condition. And yeah, it's been an eye-opening process. It's been fun, but it hasn't just been me. There's been a whole team in Airlink, our operator, who's been great. We've had great assistance from those that already own Phenoms, the type of jet that we've bought, and obviously a lot of faith and trust put in us.
So fractional ownership, is it kind of akin to, buying a fraction of a boat that you have sitting on the harbour and you get X amount of weekends a year type thing?
Yeah, exactly right. So everything that we've done, like the jet card especially, and now into fractional ownership, that has all come from the feedback of our existing customer group. So they sort of sit back and go, geez, I'm starting to fly a bit. Maybe I should look at ownership. And some have gone and done it against my advice and either purchased a lemon or just didn't use the aircraft for what it is.
Yep.
So they sort of keep coming back and going, wouldn't it be cool to do this as a bit of a group where you share the load with 3 other owners? And, you still get the depreciation benefits, the tax benefits, and a profit share. You've got Airlie running it that runs a very high volume operation, and all of a sudden we're putting your asset into that volume when you're not using it. So, yeah, you buy a quarter share of a jet, you take up a quarter of all the fixed expenses, you've got your own dedicated pilot, and, yeah, you're just paying for at cost when you're flying it and when you're not using it. So you get 60 calendar days a year to use it, which I've been told by owners is too much, but I'm happy with that. But when you're not using it, we will well and truly use it. And obviously 70% of that profit gets swung back to you.
Stay with me, Luke. We'll be back in a minute. I'm speaking to Luke Hampshire, co-founder and CEO of Airlie. Okay, so Airlie, how many flights are you doing? I'm trying to get my head around, you obviously lease planes primarily, now you have your own plane. How many flights are you doing a month, for example?
Oh, and that's the really interesting thing. Hey, there's months where we think it's going to be quiet and we break records, and there's months we think we're going to break records and we get really quiet. So if you look at an hours base, we're sort of always hovering between 70 and 120 hours per month that we're flying.
Okay. And the people using it are mostly business people?
Yeah. So I don't know how it's happened, but we have really fallen into this incredible niche of self-made business owners, and men and women who, as I said, that these smaller jets, they're not what you see on Instagram.
Yeah.
They're lovely planes. They're obviously very expensive, but they have a greater calling, I guess, of getting these individuals from, Brisbane to Rockhampton, across to Emerald, being able to hit up all these locations. And, for a lot of these customers, they haven't done it before, or they've always thought about it, but gone, no, it's too expensive. And once we have this platform, or now that we have this platform that shows you what the price is, they look at it and go, hang on a sec, I can do this in one day and be back home in time for dinner.
And you can get in and out of airports. I mean, I'd imagine Emerald's very different to Brisbane, for example.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's around 120 airports on the East Coast that open up when you look at a jet outside of what the airline service.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could be living Bayside and being able to fly out of Moorabbin to Sydney. You avoid the peak drive to Tulla, and you're probably out of Brighton, probably 15 minutes from Moorabbin Airport, 20 minutes from Moorabbin Airport. There's no nonsense. When you arrive, you are literally 20 to 30 meters from the jet. You walk into the jet, the door closes, your wheel's up in 5 minutes.
Wow.
To a lot of us, that doesn't matter, right? Me too. I'll cram into a commercial flight, and it just is what it is. You succumb to their schedules. For these individuals, they are able to say, I know I'm going to land in Sydney at 8:30. It's done. If they need to go to the Blue Mountains, they can go to Bankstown instead, which is a little bit closer. If they're heading to Wollongong, they can fly into Wollongong. Basically, all those schedules and routes get thrown out the window. You just tell us where you need to go and where you are. And that's our bread and butter. That's what we do.
And I noticed on your website, I can bring my pet with me rather than put it in the cargo hold.
We have always had an open pet policy, right? So look, with the larger jets, it always comes down to the owner, but on the light jets that we frequently use, absolutely. But I'd say it's probably 10 to 15% of our over consumer base are because we allow pets in the cabin.
So what next for Airlie? I remember a couple of years ago, I think it was, when we spoke, you had bought Empty Jets, a competitor. So I presume that's it's kind of been subsumed well and truly into Airlie. You've got your own plane now. What next?
Oh, look, the next 5 years, I mean, we're extremely ambitious. We're growing a great team, and there's a lot of belief in what we're doing. So ultimately, we think there's a presence of Airlie in New Zealand. We think there's a presence in Southeast Asia as well. Mm-hmm. And I really do believe that this fractional ownership opportunity will continue to scale not only on the East Coast, but into slightly larger aircraft, so your sort of sub 8 seats, and start to touch regions in Southeast Asia as well. So, we're extremely ambitious. We're never satisfied with where we're at. This week's been a great week, but it's like, okay, that's one aircraft. How do we get the next one? Where's the next one? Where's the next one? So it's just that continual frenetic pace. And I mean, there's been a lot of patience about it. I wanted this probably 4 years ago, but I don't think Airlie was ready for it. But now that's where I see us. I really think we can make a really substantial impact in the APAC and Southeast Asian region with the kind of products that we do offer. which is always niched around the more cost-effective light aircraft.
Luke, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
That was Luke Hampshire, co-founder and CEO of Airly. This is the Fear and Greed Business Interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.